will start by speaking about the new international equilibrium in which emerging countries are playing a prominent role as new global centers of production and consumption, of trade and wealth. I apologize if my English is not as good as it should be, but I sincerely thank you for your comprehension. And so, if you don't mind, let's start. I will give you, I hope, a brief introduction of this, and later I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have about the topic we are going to talk about. The structure of the presentation is as follows. First, I will talk about the concept of emerging economies and their increasing significance in the global scene. Second, I will mention their development prospects for the next decades. And later, I will refer to some key factors that lie behind their success. And to conclude, I will present a perspective overview of the case of Mexico, particularly some specific measures to accomplish a better future. Let's start with the emerging economies. The term emerging economies is an extension of the concept emerging markets, coined at the end of the 1970s, that refers solely to the capital markets of developing countries. This broad category includes such different nations as you will see at the presentation: Argentina, Algeria, Bangladesh, etc., of course going through Mexico and Thailand. Taking into account this diversity, emerging economies may be defined in broad terms as those countries which have started to grow but have yet not reached a mature stage of development, and or where there still is significant potential for economic or political instability. The importance of the emerging economies. The following facts illustrate their importance. As a group, their annual economic growth has more than doubled that of high-income economies. In 2007, they grew 7.8%, in contrast with the 2.6%. Second, two-thirds of the world economic growth stemmed from emerging countries. Third, their imports are becoming an import engine of the world economic growth. Their demand accounts for 50% of global imports growth. They have a direct impact on inflation, interest rates, and wages of developed countries. During the 1990s, the flows of foreign direct investment towards this country increased 23% yearly. In 5 years, the risk levels have declined to less than half, measured by the risk premium of their bonds. According to some studies, China and India are the preferred destinations for foreign direct investment above the United States. In the last decade, emerging countries decreased their share in the institutional investor portfolio from 9.67% to 16%. The foreign direct investment among emerging countries grows 5 times faster than the foreign direct investment from developed countries to emerging countries. Approximately 60 companies of Fortune Global 500 are based in emerging economies. 14 of these multinational companies are specialized in high technology or in capital-intensive industries. The Asian economies represent 26% of the IT global services market. Their poverty levels are being consistently reduced and their consumption is increasing. In 2007, their consumer spending grew 3 times faster than that of the developed world. What are the prospects for the emerging economies? There are all kinds of prospects regarding the future of emerging countries. In general, they agree that during the following years, these economies will continue playing an important role in the global economy. Some specialists even point out that by the decade of 2030 and 2040, they will outrank developed economies. For instance, Goldman Sachs estimates that in 2027 year, the economy of China will beat in size the economy of the United States, and the economy of India will do the same in 2050. On the other side of the forecasters, Alan Greenspan is more skeptical. He argues that the accelerated rhythm of the development of these countries cannot be sustained for so many years because it is founded on, first, the impact of the transition from the rural economy to another one of competitive urban markets, and second, the adoption in their production processes of existing technologies developed in high-income countries. According to Greenspan, both processes are not infinite and will soon be limited by wage increases in China, with their consequent growth in the price of their exports, as well as a reduction in their savings and investments rates due to the adoption of Western consumption patterns. What holds in both future views is that emerging economies offer an encouraging growth prospects, even nowadays when world economy is facing a slowdown. According to estimations in the International Monetary Fund, the emerging economies will expand 6.3% in 2008 and 6.4% in 2009, compared to the 1.3% expansion of the advanced economies in both years. Now, with regard to projections for the following decades, we can observe the following. By 2020, the size of the world economy will increase threefold compared to the present one. Global GDP will grow to an annual rate of 3.5% during 2008 and 2020. China and India will continue to be the emerging economies with the highest growth rate, in average of 6% per year. China will contribute 26.7% to the global economic growth, whereas the United States will contribute 15.9% and India 12.2%. The global GDP share of the G7 developed countries, that today accounts for 57%, will probably decline to only 21% by the year 2050. In 2020, the United States will continue being the largest consumption market. China will be the second, and India will compete with the European Union for the third place. The GDP of the United States will grow 3% annually, thanks to the increase in productivity and its investment in information and communication technologies, whereas Latin America might fall behind by growing only 3.2% per year during the period of 2008-2020, figure that is below the global and Asian. Figure that it is below the global and Asian averages, and even that of the Middle East and the north of Africa. Unfortunately, Latin America is an example of a region that has not achieved the success levels of other emerging economies. In spite of facing recurrent crises, its poor growth seems to be more related to long-term structural factors, such as the level of its human capital, which is lower than that of Asia or Europe. This is something that has to change in the medium term, due to the fact that if our region continues being the eternal supplier of cheap raw materials or labor ejector, this will not benefit anyone. Perhaps the low Latin American performance may be a sign that the future of emerging economies is limited by their capacity to reduce poverty and income inequality.